natural caves and what is now the thriving St. Paul, Minnesota, weren't always so full of life. However, this historical landmark has seen many fascinating generations of change. From mushroom farms to gangster hangouts, the Wabasha Street Caves have seen many transformations, long before becoming the swing dance club it is today. Beginning in the 1930s, when gangs and mobsters ruled the streets of the Twin Cities, the caves offered protection to criminals on the run.
Well, the gangster era was very active here in St. Paul back in the 1930s. Every famous gangster you've ever heard of from that era, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, the Barker Gang, they all came to St. Paul to hang out at one time or another because they had a little deal, a quiet deal with the St. Paul Police Department. If they would follow some quiet little rules and behave themselves, then they were protected by our police force. So they all came down to St. Paul to live. It was a safe city for them.
These notorious men used the caves to their full advantage. The caves became the perfect place to eat, drink, and cause mischief. The entrance of the caves were constructed to look like an old castle, and before long, the Castle Royal nightclub was born.
It had been a speakeasy during the 1920s, back during the Prohibition era, and when Prohibition was repealed, well, they said, might as well do it legally. We've been doing it illegally all these years, why not? And so all the gangsters came down here and had their parties.
It wasn't all fun and games for all who spent time at the Castle Royal Club. In the darkness of night, gangsters could literally get away with murder. One such incident has gone down in history as one of the cave's great mysteries.
Back then, there was no law that told you what time you had to close. You closed when you felt like it. And gangsters liked to party all night and sleep all day. So this incident occurred probably somewhere close to dawn. And it was witnessed by a woman who worked at the Castle Royal. She was in charge of locking up that night, and she witnessed a gentleman with a Thompson submachine gun murder 3 other gangsters in front of our fireplace. And we still have those bullet holes in the fireplace today. And this woman who witnessed the murder was out in the parking lot, and she saw that nobody left while she was waiting for the police to arrive. And this being a cave, there is no back door, there are no windows. So since nobody left, our best guess is the bodies were dragged back to the unfinished caves and a hasty grave was dug in the soft sandstone floor. And that's probably where those guys still are today. Well, by 1940, we had World War II coming and most people didn't feel like going out and partying. Plus their largest clientele, the gangsters, were all either dead or in prison. So business kind of dropped off. And so they closed the Castle Royal in 1940. It was a disco in the 1970s called the Castle Royale. They pronounced it just a little bit differently, and you would not recognize the place during the 70s.
The end of the 80s brought on a sad turn for the once thriving cave.
It makes it a great place for homeless people to live in the wintertime. So this was a problem for the city of St. Paul, people breaking into the caves, and these caves with a door and furniture was very attractive.
The city of St. Paul had a decision to make. It was dangerous and unsanitary for people dwelling there. There seemed to be only one solution.
Actually, the city of St. Paul was going to fill these caves in. They were going to rip down the castle outside and just fill it up and keep all the people from going out in there. Well, then along comes Bremer Construction. They needed someplace to store their equipment overnight, but they didn't have a lot of money. And one day, they're driving up Wabasha Street and they saw a big old sign on the cliff that said, "Cave for sale."
Bremer saw the great opportunity and bought the caves to use as storage, just 3 days before the caves were to be destroyed.
So once they cleaned out the mess and they started dismantling the old broken down disco, they discovered this underneath, this beautiful 1930s restaurant, and they thought it was just too pretty to use for just construction equipment. They discovered that back in the 1930s, when this was the Castle Royal, it was a stop for many famous big bands of that era. We know that Tommy Dorsey played here, and Cab Calloway and Harry James, who were all giant rock stars of their day, only they were big bands.
Under the ownership of Bremer, the caves were restored to life again and have thrived ever since. Today, the caves are open for the public to come experience history and enjoy the beauty of this special landmark in a fun way.
So the only time they're open to the public is on those Thursday nights when they do the swing dancing, sort of as, you know, an homage to their history from the 1930s.
Everyone, from college students to seniors, come to enjoy the music and learn the same swing dancing of those who enjoyed the caves in the 1930s.
I went with a group of a couple people, and it's really cool because it's got like a live band and there's The atmosphere is just really neat.
I think these caves are extremely lucky that a construction company bought them.